The trash bag hit my chest before I could process what was happening. My mother's face was hard, carved from stone and disgust. "You're not bringing this shame into our house," she said, her voice flat and final. Behind her, my father stood in the doorway like a wall, his arms crossed. "Give me your key," he demanded. I fumbled with the keychain, my hands shaking so badly I dropped it twice. "Please," I whispered, "just let me stay until morning." My mother pointed at the porch light above my head. "You've got light. That's more than you deserve." I stood there holding everything I owned in a plastic bag, 7 months pregnant at 17, waiting for someone to say this was a test, that they were teaching me a lesson. That any second now, the door would open and they'd pull me back inside. But my father's hand moved to the doorknob, and I heard the deadbolt slide into place with a sound that felt like the end of the world. My name is Kelsey Whitaker, and I spent that first night sitting on the curb, 2 houses down, hugging the trash bag like it was the only thing keeping me solid. The streetlight buzzed above me. Every few minutes, I'd turn to look at my house, waiting for the porch light to flick off, for my mother to open the door, for someone to come outside and tell me this was all a horrible mistake. But the light stayed on, cold and mocking. Morning sickness rolled through my stomach in waves, but I couldn't tell if it was the pregnancy or pure fear. The worst part wasn't the cold air or the hard concrete. It was remembering the look on their faces when they shut the door. They looked relieved, like I was a problem they'd finally solved, like throwing away their daughter was easier than dealing with neighbors' whispers. Across the street, a clinic sign glowed in pale blue letters. I stood up slowly, my legs numb, and started walking toward it because it was the only light that didn't feel like punishment. The clinic lobby was empty except for a night nurse restocking supplies behind the desk. She looked up when I walked in, took one look at my trash bag and swollen eyes, and didn't ask a single question. She just filled a paper cup with water from the cooler and pointed to the chairs along the wall. "Waiting room's open until 6, she said quietly. I sat down and pressed both hands against my belly, whispering promises I didn't know how to keep. The nurse disappeared into a back room and returned with a blanket that smelled like laundry detergent. She draped it over my shoulders without a word. "My parents kicked me out," I said, because saying it out loud might make it real enough to fix. She nodded like she'd heard it before. "You can stay until morning," she said. "After that, we'll figure something out." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw my father's name on the screen. My heart jumped so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Maybe he was calling to apologize. Maybe he realized what they'd done. I answered on the second ring, my voice shaking. "Dad?" There was silence on the other end, the kind that stretches long enough to hurt. Then his voice came through, flat and emotionless. "Don't call this number again." I opened my mouth to speak, to beg, to explain, but my throat locked shut like someone had their hands around it. "Dad, please." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, waiting for it to ring again, waiting for him to call back and say he didn't mean it. But the screen stayed dark. The nurse looked up from her paperwork and saw my face crumble. I couldn't breathe right. Couldn't think. Couldn't understand how the man who taught me to ride a bike could cut me off with 6 words and a dial tone. The nurse walked over and sat down beside me, not touching, just present. "Do you have anywhere to go?" she asked gently. I shook my head. The answer was no. The answer had always been no. I just hadn't known it until now. 2 days later, I sat in my school counselor's office pretending I was fine. She slid a folder across her desk filled with pamphlets about shelters, teen parent programs, and resources I didn't know existed. She also gave me a bus pass, holding it out like she was handing me a lifeline. "This isn't your fault," she said, and something inside me broke open. I cried in that office for 20 minutes while she sat quietly, letting me fall apart without trying to fix it. She made phone calls while I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting them to keep myself from screaming. A woman's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "We have a spot available in our transitional housing program," she said. "It's small, but it's safe. You'd share a kitchen with 2 other residents." My counselor looked at me, eyebrows raised. "It's available today," the woman continued, "but we need an answer right now." My mind went blank. I thought about my bedroom at home, my bed, my desk, the posters on the wall. Then I thought about the deadbolt and my father's voice. "Yes," I whispered. "I'll take it." The room was smaller than my old bedroom, with beige walls and a window that looked out onto a parking lot. The mattress sagged in the middle. The shared kitchen down the hall smelled like canned soup and old coffee. I unpacked my trash bag slowly, putting my clothes into the narrow dresser, trying to make the space feel like mine. That first night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to voices through the thin walls, waiting for my mother to call. I kept my phone on the pillow beside my head, volume turned all the way up, just in case. But the call never came. I waited for 3 days, then a week, then 2. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would leap, and every time it wasn't them, something inside me died a little more. I ran into my aunt at the grocery store on a Thursday afternoon. I was buying bread and peanut butter with food stamps when I saw her in the cereal aisle. Our eyes met. I smiled, hopeful, desperate. She looked at me like I was something dirty she'd stepped in. My aunt walked toward me, her face twisted in disgust. "Your mother told me what you did?" she hissed, her voice low enough that other shoppers couldn't hear but loud enough to cut. "Running off like that, breaking their hearts." My stomach dropped. "I didn't run off," I said, my voice shaking. "They threw me out. They locked the door and—" She held up her hand like she didn't want to hear it. "Don't lie to make yourself look better. Your mother is devastated. Your poor father can barely sleep." I tried to speak again, but she was already turning away, her cart rolling down the aisle like I didn't exist. I stood there frozen, holding my basket, understanding what had happened. My parents hadn't just thrown me out. They'd rewritten the story. They'd made themselves the victims and me the villain. If they could lie this easily to family, they could lie about anything. They could lie about me forever, and no one would question it. I left my basket on the floor and walked out of the store. The labor started at 3 in the morning, sharp and sudden, like my body was trying to tear itself apart. I called a cab and rode to the hospital alone, gripping the door handle and breathing through contractions. In the delivery room, a nurse held my hand and told me I was stronger than I thought. I didn't feel strong. I felt 17 and terrified and completely alone. When the baby cried for the first time, I cried too. Not just from relief or joy, but from grief. Grief for my mother, who chose pride over being here. Grief for my father, who couldn't stand up for me. Grief for the version of family I thought I had. I held my daughter against my chest, her tiny fingers curling around mine, and made a promise that felt too big for my body. "You will never beg for love in your own home," I whispered. "I swear it." I didn't know yet how hard that promise would be to keep, but I meant it with everything I had left. I took my first office job when my daughter was 6 months old. It was low-paying, entry-level work, filing, data entry, answering phones. But I showed up every single day, even when I was exhausted, even when childcare fell through, even when my body felt like it was held together with tape. I learned to survive on schedules and checklists, on showing up 5 minutes early and staying 10 minutes late. Missing things felt like death, so I stopped missing things. Deadlines, appointments, school events. I built my life around reliability because everything else had proven unreliable. My supervisor noticed. She started giving me more responsibility, trusting me with compliance reports and vendor communications. One afternoon, she pulled me aside and said, "You're the only one I trust with the sensitive stuff." Something flickered inside me when she said that. Not pride, exactly. Power, the kind that comes from proving you're dependable when the world expected you to fail. I started staying later, learning more, asking questions. Slowly, I stopped feeling like the girl who got thrown out. I started feeling like someone who couldn't be dismissed. I got obsessed with documentation. Emails, timestamps, approval trails. I learned that feelings didn't protect you in the real world, but records did. If someone asked me to do something, I confirmed it in writing. If a deadline changed, I logged it. If a conversation mattered, I followed up with a summary. People started calling me meticulous, careful, impossible to corner. I climbed quietly through the company. Administrative assistant, to coordinator, to operations lead. I worked in stable, hyper-realistic office environments where mistakes cost money and reputations, where details mattered more than charm. I thrived there. I built a life that was financially secure, emotionally guarded, and mine. On my daughter's 10th birthday, I almost mailed my parents a photo. I stood at the mailbox with the envelope in my hand, imagining my mother opening it. Would she feel regret? Pride? Would she see how well I'd done and realize what she'd missed? Then I imagined her face, cold, smug, satisfied, if she knew I still wanted her approval. I ripped the envelope in half and threw it in the trash. That night, I dreamed about the porch light, but this time, I wasn't the one standing outside. I was inside the house, warm and safe, and someone was knocking from the other side. Desperate, begging. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, unsure if the dream was a warning or a wish. Years passed. My daughter grew. I got promoted again, then again. I became the person managers turned to when something critical needed handling. I bought a small house. I built savings. I stopped waiting for my parents to apologize because waiting felt like drowning. On an ordinary Tuesday, 15 years after they locked me out, my phone rang with an unknown number. My instinct said ignore it, but something deeper, something I couldn't name, told me to answer. I swiped the screen and said hello. There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in over a decade. Kelsey. My father. My hands went cold, no warmth in his tone, no apology, just my name, like he was testing whether he still had access to me. We need your signature, he said. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up the same way it had that night on the porch. For what? I finally managed. It's about the property, he said, like I should already know. Like we'd been in contact this whole time. Like 15 years of silence was normal. What property? I asked. He sighed, impatient. The family trust. There's land. We need to sell, and your name is on the paperwork. We just need you to sign a release. My mind was spinning. Family trust? Land? I'd never heard about any of this. Why didn't you tell me about this before? I asked. It wasn't relevant, he said. But it's relevant now. Someone will bring the paperwork by. Just sign it and we can move forward. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my car outside my office, staring at my phone, trying to process what just happened. 15 years of nothing. No calls, no apologies, no acknowledgement. And now they needed something from me. 2 days later, a man knocked on my door holding a folder. He introduced himself as a courier, handed me the folder, and said, just sign the highlighted sections and send it back. He left before I could ask questions. I sat at my kitchen table and opened the folder slowly. Legal documents. Dense paragraphs filled with terms like release of interest and waiver of claims. My name appeared in several places, next to signature lines. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking. There were references to parcels of land, appraised values, and a pending sale. My parents were selling property I didn't even know existed, and they needed my signature to make it clean. I spotted the phrase, release of interest, and my stomach twisted. They were asking me to give up something that was apparently mine. Without explanation, without negotiation. Just sign and disappear. My mother called that evening. I saw her name on the screen and almost didn't answer. But I did. Did you get the papers? She asked. No greeting, no how are you. Just business. Yes, it's good. Sign them and send them back. We're on a deadline. I need to understand what I'm signing, I said. There was a long pause. Then my mother's voice turned sharp. Stop acting difficult, Kelsey. My body reacted like I was 17 again. My chest tightened, my hands started shaking, but I wasn't 17 anymore. I'm not being difficult, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I'm asking what this is. It's family business, she snapped. You wouldn't understand the details, just sign. Then explain it to me, I said. She exhaled loudly, the sound dripping with frustration. After everything we did for you, she said, her voice rising. After we raised you, fed you, gave you a home, this is how you repay us? I laughed, one sharp, bitter sound I couldn't hold back. You threw me out, I said. You locked the door and told me not to call. You made your choices, she shot back. Don't pretend you're some victim. My father's voice cut in from the background. He must have been on speaker. We'll lose the sale if you don't sign, he said quietly. And underneath his words, I heard something I'd never heard before. Panic. They weren't just asking, they were desperate. The next day at work, I opened a new file on my computer and started doing what I did best. Logging, documenting, tracking. I wrote down every phone call, every word exchanged, every date and time. Then I sent an email to my father's address, the one he'd called from, requesting full documentation, the trust paperwork, accounting records, and complete sale terms. I kept the tone professional and calm. 20 minutes later, my aunt sent me a text. "Your parents say you're trying to punish them. Why are you being so cruel?" I stared at the message, understanding what was happening. They'd started a smear campaign. They were telling the family I was vindictive, ungrateful, holding up a sale out of spite. I didn't respond to my aunt. Instead, I called my daughter into the living room and sat her down. She was 15 now, smart and watchful. "I need to tell you about your grandparents," I said. I told her everything. The porch, the deadbolt, the 15 years of silence. When I finished, she hugged me and said, "You don't owe them anything." Over the next week, relatives I barely remembered started calling. My uncle, my father's cousin, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all saying the same thing. "Just sign the papers. Don't be difficult. Family is family." No one asked what happened to me. No one asked why I'd been erased from family events for 15 years. They only cared about what I could do for my parents now. The old loneliness crept back in, heavy and familiar. But it hit different this time. I wasn't powerless anymore. I wasn't 17 and pregnant with nowhere to go. I had a job, a home, a daughter who loved me. I had options. 3 days later, my mother called again. "We're having a family meeting," she said. "Saturday at 2. Bring the signed form." "I haven't decided if I'm signing," I said. Her voice turned ice cold. "You'll be there, and you'll bring it signed." She hung up. I sat at my desk, staring at the phone, my mind working. Then I called the number my supervisor had given me months ago. A lawyer she'd recommended when I asked about estate planning. The attorney answered on the second ring. I met with the attorney after work on Thursday. Her name was Victoria Cross, and she had the kind of calm, sharp energy that made you feel safe. I handed her the release form and explained everything. The 15 years of silence, the sudden demand, the family pressure. She read through the document slowly, her expression darkening. "They want you to sign blind," she said finally. "Never do that." "What does it mean?" I asked. "It means they're asking you to give up legal rights without full disclosure," she said. "You're entitled to see the trust documents, the sale agreement, and a full accounting of the property value. If they're refusing to provide that, it's a red flag." For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was treating my safety like it mattered. "What do I do?" I asked. She leaned back in her chair. "We request full disclosure. If the numbers don't match up, we push harder. And if they refuse, we know they're hiding something." She paused. "Do you want me to come to the meeting on Saturday?" I thought about walking into that room alone, facing my parents and their script. Then I thought about walking in with someone who couldn't be manipulated. "Yes," I said. The documents arrived late Friday night, delivered by email with no explanation. They were incomplete. Pages missing. Values redacted. My attorney called me immediately. "This is intentional," she said. "They're stalling." We stayed up late, cross-referencing public records and tax filings. Victoria found the property appraisals. The land was worth significantly more than the numbers my parents had implied. And there was something else. A deadline in the sale contract that felt manufactured. Pressure tactics. Saturday morning, I got ready for the meeting with the same focus I used for work presentations. Professional clothes, calm exterior, documents organized in a folder. My daughter hugged me at the door. "You've got this, Mom," she said. I drove to the community center where my parents had booked a room, Victoria following in her own car. When I walked into the room, my parents froze. My mother's face flickered with something close to panic before she forced a smile. "Kelsey," she said like we were pretending. "You came." "I did," I said. I placed the unsigned release on the table. My father's eyes went straight to it, then to Victoria standing beside me. "Who is this?" he asked. "My attorney," I said calmly. "Victoria Cross." My mother's smile disappeared. "You brought a lawyer to a family meeting?" "You brought legal documents," I said. "I brought someone who understands them." My father stood up, trying to regain control. "This is ridiculous. We're just asking for a simple signature." "Then you won't mind providing full documentation," Victoria said smoothly. She slid a folder across the table. "Complete trust paperwork, full accounting of property values, transparent sale terms." My mother's face went red. This is our business, not hers. Kelsey is named in the trust, Victoria said. That makes it her business too. There was silence. My father glanced at my mother. Something unspoken passed between them. We don't have time for this, my mother said. The buyer is waiting. Then I suggest you provide the documents quickly, Victoria replied. My father exhaled slowly, then pulled out his phone. He made a call, his voice low and tense. 20 minutes later, a full file arrived via email. Victoria opened it on her laptop, reading carefully. Her eyebrows rose. Interesting, she said. Victoria turned the laptop toward me. The land is appraised at $800,000, she said. Your share, as outlined in the original trust, would be 1/3. That's over $260,000. My parents went very still. The sale they're proposing, Victoria continued, allocates your share at $50,000, with a liability waiver that would prevent you from contesting it later. I felt my face go hot. You were going to cheat me out of $200,000? My mother stood up. That's not what this is. That's exactly what this is, Victoria said. And the deadline you mentioned? It's artificial. The buyer is willing to wait. You created urgency to pressure her into signing without reading. My father sat down heavily. For the first time, he looked old. We have medical bills, he said quietly. We need the money. Victoria pulled up another document. Your financial disclosures show this sale is funding a retirement property purchase. Not medical bills, not an emergency. An upgrade. The room went silent. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From anger, from clarity. I stood up slowly, looking at my parents across the table. You threw me out when I was 17, I said. You locked the door and told me not to call. For 15 years, you pretended I didn't exist. My mother opened her mouth, but I kept going. Now you need something from me, and you thought you could lie, pressure me, and take what's mine without even acknowledging what you did. Kelsey, my father started. No, I said. I'm not signing your release. My mother's face twisted. You're being vindictive. I'm being careful, I said. There's a difference. Victoria slid a new document across the table. My client is willing to consider a buyout agreement, she said. Fair market value for her share, full accounting, transparent terms. She paused, plus one condition. My mother's face went white. What condition? I took a deep breath. I want a written acknowledgement, I said. Signed by both of you, stating that you removed me from your home at 17 while I was pregnant, and that you told the family I ran away. The room exploded. My mother shot to her feet, shouting. My father looked like he'd been slapped. Absolutely not, my mother said. You want to humiliate us? I want the truth on record, I said. That's all. This is vindictive, she repeated. This is closure, I said. Not revenge. My father rubbed his face with both hands. We can't sign that. The family already thinks I'm the villain, I said. You made sure of that. Victoria tapped the table. My client's offer stands. Fair buyout, full disclosure, signed acknowledgement, or no deal. My mother looked at my father. He looked back. There was a long silence. Then my father's phone rang. He answered, his face going pale. The buyer, he said after hanging up. He's heard there are complications. He's threatening to pull out. My mother turned on me, her eyes blazing. This is your fault. No, I said quietly. This is yours. For the next hour, Victoria and my parents hastily called lawyer negotiated terms. My parents refused the acknowledgement 3 times, but the buyer was getting impatient. The sale was collapsing. Finally, my father signed. Then, after a long moment, my mother did too. The acknowledgement was brief, clinical, but it existed. The buyout closed 2 weeks later. The money hit my account on a Tuesday morning, $260,000. Fair, documented, clean. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, but also safe. The kind of safe that comes from knowing you can't be cornered anymore. I paid off my mortgage, set up a college fund for my daughter, built my savings into something that could survive emergencies. My life didn't get louder, it got quieter, more peaceful. The family renewal event my parents had been planning quietly disappeared from the calendar. No one mentioned it. No one called to explain. I didn't reach out to ask. 3 weeks after the buyout, I got a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Your mother wants to have a private conversation. She says you humiliated her. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I blocked the number. My daughter asked me that night if I felt bad. No, I said. I feel free." She hugged me, and I realized the promise I made in the hospital 15 years ago had come true. She'd never begged for love in her own home. Neither would I. Not anymore. A year passed, then two. My parents tried reaching out twice more through relatives, always with the same message. I'd hurt them, embarrassed them, ruined their plans. I never responded. My attorney kept copies of everything, the acknowledgement, the sale documents, the texts and emails, in a secure file, just in case. My daughter graduated high school with honors. We celebrated with a small party, just the two of us and a few close friends. No family drama, no tension, just us. One night she asked me if I ever regretted how things turned out. "No," I said honestly. "I regret what they did, but I don't regret protecting myself." She nodded. "Good." I thought about the girl I used to be. 17, pregnant, sitting on a curb with a trash bag. I thought about how scared she was, how small she felt. If I could go back and tell her one thing, it would be this: you will survive. You will build something better than what they took from you. You will be enough. I never saw my parents again. I heard through distant relatives that they sold their house and moved somewhere quieter. I didn't ask where. 5 years after the buyout, I got promoted to senior operations director. My daughter started college on a full scholarship, studying law because she said she wanted to help people who couldn't protect themselves. I was proud in a way that felt clean. The kind of proud that doesn't need anyone else's approval. One afternoon I was cleaning out old files and found the ripped-up envelope from years ago. The one I almost sent with my daughter's photo. I held the pieces in my hand, remembering how desperate I'd been for my mother's validation. How much I'd wanted her to see me. I didn't want that anymore. I threw the pieces away again, this time without hesitation. My phone buzzed, another message from a relative. "Your mother says she's not well. She's asking for you." I read it twice, then I deleted it. Some doors, once closed, don't need to be reopened. Some people earn access to your life, others lose it. My parents made their choice 15 years ago on a porch under a cold light. I made mine in a lawyer's office with documents and clarity. I chose myself, I chose my daughter, I chose peace, and I never looked back.